I had a few people email me about Ric Flair on the Kill Tony podcast, walking off stage in the middle of the show. They wanted to know my thoughts on the whole thing. And I gotta be honest, I never even heard of Kill Tony before. So this was my first time watching it. I got an education here. This is my first time watching it. I have a friend that knows about it, so he kind of clued me in as to what it is. And then I watched it. For those who don't know, Kill Tony is a stage show. It's hosted by Tony Hinchcliffe. He's a comedian. You might know him from the Joe Rogan show. He's the one who's always feeding Joe wrestling trivia whenever he has a wrestler on the show because he's a fan. And I guess Ric Flair is one of his heroes. Ric Flair is one of his idols, so he got Ric to agree to come on the show. The video of this is on YouTube, by the way. If you just type in Kill Tony, they have a whole channel devoted to the show, and all the shows are up there in video form. It's like a giant roast where they invite amateur comedians to come up, and they have, I think, 60 seconds to do a set. And the ones I saw were generally fucking terrible. That's why they're amateur comedians. But it gets them exposure, but then they just get absolutely roasted. So you would think that since he agreed to come on the show, Ric Flair would know what the format of the show actually was. Evidently, that was not the case. I watched it. First of all, I'm sure Flair was at least 10 beers in before he even walked out on stage. Now, Flair always sounds punch drunk, but I guarantee you he was drinking heavily before he even walked out there. He sounded sloshed the entire time. He sat down with Tony at the table at the dais that they had there, and they had some other people out there, before they started bringing out the amateurs. And Flair was having fun. He had a big smile on his face. He was telling stories that didn't really fit. This was not really a wrestling audience, but he was enjoying himself. And then he turned into Debbie Downer, and he started talking about all the wrestlers that have died this year. Terry Funk, Iron Sheik, Superstar Billy Graham, Bray Wyatt. I mean, this really wasn't the type of environment to bring that up, so that brought the mood down for a bit. And then things got a little bit lighter after that, and Flair's just yapping on, and Tony just talks over him at one point to introduce another comedian to sit with them at the table. This guy, Ari, who comes out of the crowd. I thought it was Necro Butcher. I thought Necro Butcher is back. I swear to God, he looked just like him. And everyone's going nuts for this guy. He takes his shirt off, and it's like Flair's entire demeanor changes when he realizes he's not the center of attention anymore. And it's not just about him. After that, they're trotting comedians out on stage and roasting them, and Flair is literally looking down at his phone. He's not even paying attention. He could not look any less interested in what was going on if he tried. I thought maybe he fell asleep. Then, almost an hour in, so he stuck it out. I mean, he was there for almost an hour. They bring this guy out. They're riding him pretty hard. And they ask the comedians questions about themselves after they do their 60 seconds. And this guy mentions that he's a high school wrestling coach. And someone says, "Man, this is fucking boring. Hey, Ric Flair, tell us another story." And everyone starts laughing. At which point, Ric Flair, all self-righteous, says, "I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to leave." And everyone's like, "Oh, no. And Tony tries to talk him into staying. Flair's mumbling away, and he says he won't ever make fun of someone who donates their time to support youth athletics. And then he mentions that his son was a great amateur wrestler and he died of a heroin overdose. So he's not going to make fun of anybody who donates their time. And whoever was there from the band on stage, they start playing sad piano music in the background, and everyone just starts laughing. Now, mind you, Flair had already said he was leaving even before they did that, so it's not like that's what caused him to leave. But he said he's not going to make fun of people who donate their time to children. He's not going to make fun of people. First of all, it's a fucking roast. That's what they do. If no one clued him in about that aspect of the show, then that's on them. But the minute he walked out on that stage, he should have known what he was in for, and he should have left right then and there if that's how he honestly felt. It's a fucking roast. And you're going to leave because they're making fun of people. So that's ridiculous enough. But for Ric Flair, of all people, to get on his high horse and say he's not going to tolerate insulting other people, or that he won't say negative things about people. How many times has this guy said negative things about other people on his own podcast? Let alone in shoot interviews. Never has any issue doing that. Now he's all high and mighty, and he has a problem with it. Apparently that isn't even the uncut episode. It was edited. The people who were there live said Flair was talking about how much he loved Asian pussy while staring right at an Asian woman in the front row. He told a story about washing a buffalo. I have no idea. Don't even ask. Maybe that's a euphemism for something. I don't know. All I know is everything seemed fine until the focus wasn't on him and he started taking some of the incoming fire. Right? They made jokes about him being old. Suddenly, he wasn't down to make fun of other people, and then he left. And we know Ric Flair is a very transactional person. If somebody says something positive and something wonderful about Ric Flair, like I remember there were moments on his podcast, they would put clips up and it's like, oh, did you hear what this guy said about me? Like he'd ask Conrad, did you hear what so-and-so said about me this week, right? What a wonderful thing. And then he would put that person over. But, if somebody says something negative, forget about it. You'll get a whole fucking Flair rant on his show. It's just how he has always been. And so I'm sure that played a little bit of a role as well in why he didn't want to be there anymore. I don't think he was expecting to be the one on the butt end of some of those shots. And that's what did it. Now remember, this is not a wrestling audience here. There may have been some wrestling fans in the audience. But in this environment here, he's not in a wrestling audience. He comes out there and yes, some people are going to bow down to him and all that shit because they know who Ric Flair is. And Flair, in a lot of ways, has transcended pro wrestling. You see him in rap videos and at award shows. So a lot of people know who Ric Flair is. But not everybody. So not everybody is going to kiss the ring and kiss his ass and treat him with all this reverence, especially in this environment where everybody is shitting on each other. That's just what they do. And I don't think he was ready for that. He wasn't expecting that. But that's the format. If he can't handle it, he shouldn't have been there in the first place. So those are my thoughts on the Kill Tony stuff. I mean, it was comical watching Flair get up on his high horse and say, oh, I'm going to make fun of people. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm going to leave. Does Flair even do his podcast anymore? I feel like it's been months since I've heard anything about it. Did he flake out on this one like he did all the other ones? He's had like 4 of them at this point. He did one years ago for MLW Radio. I think that was the first one. Then there was one with Conrad that he just quit because he got bored. Then he tried one with Mark Madden, which was a disaster, and the two of them had like a 30 or 40 year friendship that apparently got blown up. They had a huge falling out. So he went back to Conrad, and now it looks like he's quit again.